Welcome back to the Gamble Smart channel. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Misinformation when it comes to gambling and slot machines is huge. This is a big reason why we created this channel in the first place, but we have another YouTuber that is starting to go again, putting a lot of misinformation out there, and I'm worried people are listening to it and not thinking twice. We want to teach you today. We're going to go through 10 of the claims that I've heard. We're going to teach you how to look it up, how to do your own research, and please do this before you go in there and start making gambling decisions based off of what you heard from us or anywhere else. Let's get going. All right, so the tool we're going to use today is ChatGPT. You can use any of them, Grok, Copilot, any of those out there, Google search, whatever you want to do. But listen, the important thing is to see what the general consensus is. The bigger group that is saying the same consistent message should outweigh the one or two people that are just saying something completely the opposite. And so if you hear that, you should put flags up and start doing a little bit more research and digging before you just take it as fact and run with it, right? This is not just in this space, in the casino space, but anywhere in life, right? So we're going to use ChatGPT. I personally like it. I think the answers are pretty good, but you can use any of these. Like I said, I've tested these questions on all of them, and they all have the same consistent message, and I just decided to pick this one. So let's just jump right into it right now. Claim number one from this YouTuber is that there is no such thing as volatility in slot machines. It's just a fancy word that us slot techs and slot creators like to use because we don't know any better, right? So volatility absolutely exists in slot machines, not just from us, but from the industry. Every par sheet, which is the explanation of the outcomes on every slot machine, consider it to be like the instruction manual that casinos can look at to decide how the game is going to play, what the probabilities are of different hits, things like that. Every single one of those has a volatility index on there that can be used so they understand what the volatility of the game is. But let's ask ChatGPT, is there such a thing as volatility in slot machines? Yes. Volatility is a key concept in slot machines, both in physical machines and in online slots. It refers to the risk level and payout behavior of a slot game. Here is a breakdown. Volatility or variance often means or measures how often and how much a slot machine pays out. It can generally be categorized into three types. Low volatility slots, which is what we talk about a lot on this channel, and after we read this, I think you're going to see why. These are frequent and small wins. They are lower risk, but usually no huge life-changing jackpots. And they're ideal for longer sessions and people with smaller budgets, which is us, right? Example, you might win every few spins, but most likely they're going to be just small amounts, just to kind of slow and steady. And then if you move up the scale a little bit, then you have the medium volatility slots. We think these are okay too. So if you want to venture into this a little bit, no problems there. They are balanced risk and reward. So it's kind of in the middle, right? Medium. Wins come semi-frequently with a chance for a moderate to big win. Very popular amongst casual players. This is probably the sweet spot. An example, you might win every 10, 15 spins, but occasionally you get a bigger hit out of it. So high volatility slots, this is what most of the room is nowadays. Infrequent but large potential wins. Higher risk, can go many spins without a win. Suited for players chasing big jackpots or high payouts. Example, you could go 50 plus spins with nothing at all, then hit a massive bonus or feature. So why does it matter? Why does volatility actually matter? It helps players like you to choose the game that fits your budget, your session goals, and your risk tolerance, okay? If you are a risky person by nature, you don't mind losing $500 within the first 5 minutes of a slot machine you play, then maybe high volatility is the way to go for you. Maybe that's what you want to do. You would rather not have any wins, but the potential to have a gigantic win. If that's you, go for it, okay? Now, other people are on the other side of that spectrum. They really don't want the big wins. They just want to last at a slot machine a long time. They want to have more coin in so you can get more, more benefits from the player's card, player's reward system, stuff like that. Then play on the lower volatility side, but you're not going to get those big jackpots and big progressives, right? So you need to decide, and this is definitely something that you can look at when you watch people play these games. Understand the volatility of the game. Budget-conscious players might prefer low or medium volatility, which we talk about a lot on this channel. High rollers or thrill seekers might opt for higher volatility, chasing that big win, okay? All right, let's move on to the next claim. Okay, the next claim that I've heard is that casinos will change the payback or the win percentage on a slot machine on the hour or sometimes on the half hour. Is this true? This goes against what we always say. So I asked ChatGPT, no, casinos do not and legally cannot in most jurisdictions change the payback percentage of their slot machines on the hour, half hour, or at will, and here's why. How slot machine RTP, return to player, works. The return to player is set in the game software by the manufacturer, okay, so they give them a couple of options to pick from, usually around 3 to 10. That is, the casinos get to pick. It's a pre-configured value that determines how much a wagered money is theoretically returned to the player over time. These settings are locked in and must be certified by gaming regulation before the slot is installed, or if it's changed later on, same process takes place. Legal and regulatory oversight. It's not the Wild West out there, guys. In regulated markets like Nevada, New Jersey, etc., casinos must comply with strict, and I mean strict, gaming laws. Changing a machine's payout percentage often requires physically opening the machine, or with remote configurations must be logged out and approved by the Gaming Control Board. Okay, so some of the newer casinos, they can push changes remotely down to the slot machines, but it still requires physical access to open it up and to apply the change. And even if they didn't, they still had to get regulatory approval. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a big headache. I've talked to a lot of people at these manufacturers, and I've asked them this question, like, is there server-based slots out there where they can just change it, whatever? Theoretically, yes. In practice, no. Nobody's doing that because it just takes so long to do it. It's not worth the effort. The paperwork is maddening, okay? And I've seen it. It's awful. It's brutal. So, yeah. They do not change it that frequently. Most casinos, once they set the payback percentage and they install the machine on the floor, it stays that way, okay? Let's get on to the next claim. Okay, the next claim is that if you get a win on a slot machine within the first 5 spins, does that give you any indication of the payback of that machine? No, getting a win within the first 5 spins on a slot machine does not give you reliable information on the machine's overall payback percentage or its volatility. Slot machine outcomes are random. Slot machines use a random number generator, RNG, to determine outcome of every spin. Each spin is independent. What happens on one spin doesn't influence the next. Winning early could happen on any machine, even one with a low RTP, simply by chance. And this is the important part here. RTP, or return to player, is a long-term statistic. It's calculated over millions of spins, not a handful. A slot with a 96% RTP doesn't guarantee you get back $96 for every $100 you put in. It might return $0 or it might return $10,000, depending on your luck. Early wins are just normal statistical variance, not a reflection of expected performance. So what all this means is basically that there's nothing you can do to test the machine in such a short term or short sample size to decide what the performance is potentially on that machine, what payback percentage it is, or even what volatility it is. It's going to take a lot more spins. Now, it doesn't take as many for volatility, but it takes way more for a payback percentage. We're talking in the hundreds of thousands. So just keep that in mind. Let's get on to the next claim. All right, the next one, this person is claiming that by using past information, such as a list of all the jackpots that have occurred within a casino by time and date, everything, that you can use that to your advantage to figure out what the casino's scheduled payback is on specific machines, okay? So I asked ChatGPT, is there any truth to this? By knowing when a previous jackpot was hit on a slot machine, does that give you any advantage on when it might hit again? No, knowing when a previous jackpot was hit on a slot machine does not give you any advantage in predicting when it might hit again, especially on modern regulated slot machines. Now here's why. Slot machines use random number generators. You're going to hear this a lot, guys. Each spin is completely independent. There's no memory of past spins or outcomes. It doesn't use past information to determine what's going to happen in the future. Each spin is a completely separate and independent event. The RNG continuously runs through thousands of number combinations per second, even when nobody is playing. Whether a jackpot was hit an hour ago, a year ago, the chances of hitting it again are exactly the same on the very next spin. The odds are constant on a slot machine. They do not change based on anything that has happened before. Okay, so every spin, separate event, separate RNG stop, constant probabilities on all the outcomes available to you on that machine, okay? So the common misconception here is that it's due to hit. We've all said this, we've all heard it, right? Many players do believe that a machine is due after a long dry spell, or it's unlikely to hit again after a jackpot. In reality, that's called the gambler's fallacy. We've done a video on that. I'll link it up here in case you want to check it out. Think of it like flipping a coin. Even if it lands on heads 5 times, the odds are still 50-50. That has not changed. The probabilities are constant. And furthermore, and it's not mentioned in here, but I think we'll get to it a little bit later, these kind of things have to happen in randomness, right? if you didn't have these hot and cold streaks where you had a long streak of wins or long streak of losses, then you could question whether it was random or not, because those things have to happen in randomness, okay? So just keep that in mind. Let's get on to the next one. All right, cruise season's coming up. Everybody's asking about slots on cruise ships. And so this is a question that I heard presented to this other YouTuber, and I wanted to address it. So, do cruise ships set the payback percentage higher on their slot machines within the first few days and then tighten them a few days into the cruise? This is a popular theory amongst cruise ship gamblers, but there's no solid evidence that cruise ships dynamically change slot payback percentages mid-cruise, and doing so would be technically complex and legally risky depending on the cruise's operational jurisdictions. So here's the breakdown. What the theory says: some players believe cruise lines loosen the slots at the start of the trip to get people excited with wins, and then build word of mouth hype, and then tighten them later when passengers are more captive, right? So you can't get off the boat now, you're gonna go back and play, and everybody's talking about the winning the first couple days of the cruise, so you better come to us to the casino on day 5 or day 6 so that you can repeat those wins. I mean, logically, it does make sense, right? Logically, that would be something a casino would love to do on a slot machine inside of a cruise ship, but the reality is much different. So the reality is slot payback percentage is pre-configured. Most cruise ship slots come with a preset specific RTP, just like you have in land-based casinos, same thing. Changing the payback requires access to the slot's internal configuration or server-based controls, not something typically done casually. It's not a casual event. It's very extensive and exhausting. Cruise lines use fixed return games. So what does this mean? So unlike online slots that come in multiple RTP versions, cruise ship slots, often provided by companies like IGT and Aristocrat, are physically configured with a set chip or software version. Changing the RTP would usually require technician access to the machine to unseal and unverify, or to verify, auditing, and sometimes regulatory compliance, especially if sailing through or docking in certain jurisdictions. Okay, so it's not the Wild West. They can't just change it whenever they want, when they want. There's a big process involved, and there has been no evidence of scheduled tightening. Okay, so even though this has been out there a lot, people talk about it, there's just no evidence to back it up that this is what's actually going on. There's no verifiable data that cruise lines schedule RTP changes based on the cruise length. And what players often interpret as tightening is probably just natural variance, okay? Just the volatility of the game, for example, especially since many people gamble heavy at the start when they're fresh and they're ready to go, right? They're excited, they're memorizing the wins, they're remembering the wins, and then towards the end of the ship, they're kind of getting tired, they're forgetting about the wins, and they're focusing on the losses, right? It's psychology in a lot of cases. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, before we jump into this next one, and this is probably the biggest one on the list, in my opinion anyway, if you are enjoying this, we would love a subscription and a thumbs up. We talk about these topics all the time. We're here to educate you to become a better gambler. By being more informed, educated, getting rid of those myths and misinformation, you're gonna be making wiser decisions when you walk into a casino and you start to gamble with your money, right? And so that's what we're trying to do here in every way possible. We have history working with casinos on the inside. We're presenting that out to you guys, as well as just trying to fact check as much as we can so people do have an open mind onto other possibilities on how all this stuff works, and don't just get caught up in the myths and what you've heard, what slot attendants have told you, etc. Right? So thank you so much. Welcome to the family. We really do appreciate it. And real quick, guys, in case you didn't know, all the machines that you have behind us are for sale. If you'd like to have one of these in your house, we can certainly make it happen. Dave and I have started a side business of refurbishing slot machines for home use. So if you're interested in that, go to gamblesmart.net, go to home slots, see what we currently have in stock and available. And if you're looking for a specific one, let us know in the comment field on that page, and we will keep an eye out for it and let you know if we find it. All right, now let's get back to the video. All right, so here's the big one, pattern recognition. Can you use pattern recognition to determine future outcomes on a slot machine? The answer is no. You cannot use pattern recognition to accurately or reliably determine future outcomes on modern slot machines, because all outcomes are governed by a random number generator. You're going to get exhausted hearing this, but it's important. That makes patterns effectively meaningless in the context of predicting future spins. So why is this? Well, let's talk about how RNG-based slot machines actually work. Slot machines use a random number generator that runs continuously, generating thousands of numbers combinations per second, even when nobody is playing. The moment you press spin, that instant, it's decided. RNG has the outcome already decided. So fast stopping, touching the screen, all that doesn't make any difference. After you committed to that bet, it is done. And this means the result is not influenced by past spins. It doesn't look back and say, wow, we've paid out a lot today, too many jackpots, need to make sure that they start losing. not how slot machines work. There is no pattern because randomness is constantly reshuffling all of the possibilities and the probabilities. So why does pattern recognition not work? Okay, let's just say, it has a great example in here. So even if you notice something like every 40 spins, a bonus round comes up. And then the reels line up with scattered symbols after a win. Just weird things that you see. The top dollar symbol above and below the pay line, things like that. Your observations are coincidental, not predictive, okay? Subject to confirmation bias. We did a video on this. We'll link it up here if you're interested. It's a big thing, big, powerful psychological thing inside of a casino, confirmation bias. Your brain naturally tries to find meaning in random data. We're all wired to this. It's very hard for us to understand the concept of randomness. It's just the way it is. Look it up. Ask ChatGPT, why is it so hard for humans to understand randomness? And it will let you know. It's a complicated topic. And for whatever reason, we are built into looking for patterns, especially in things that we don't understand. And this is something that could really mess you up inside of a casino by trying to think that you've found some kind of solution, where you see the triple diamond symbol come out and you think, oh, that means it's getting warmed up, it's about to hit. Or man, the bonus symbol sure is showing up a lot, it's right around the corner. These are dangerous things to be thinking. And I understand why your brain is doing it, because it's intentionally designed that way. Casinos know this. Casinos and slot machine manufacturers know this. They use these tricks against us on the slot machines. But you gotta look all past that and understand that each spin is completely random and separate. Past events have nothing to do with future outcomes, and stop trying to identify patterns. You're not going to find any. It's a fool's errand. You're going to run into trouble. Let's get into the next one. All right, the next claim that I've heard is that there's a way to reset a slot machine by cashing out, taking your player's card out, waiting 30 seconds, something like that, putting your player's card back in and putting your cash back in, tricking the machine into thinking that you're a new player, right? Or resetting the machine, whatever the reason is. But that removing your player's card, cashing out, and then reinserting your card or money does not reset a slot machine in any meaningful way that affects its outcomes, odds, or payback percentage, right? So what actually happens when you do that? So let's say that you insert your player's card and money, you play a few spins, you cash out, you remove your card, you reinsert your card and money and start again. What actually changed by you doing that? So the machine's RNG is still running. It has not stopped because you did that. And no part of the game logic is reset. You're just starting a new session from your perspective, but the game does not know and does not care. It's just waiting for somebody to press that spin button. It doesn't know who you are. And the RNG does not care about your card, your money, or your actions. Every spin is still completely random and independent. So why do some players think that this actually works? Because we get comments all the time by people swearing, I will never play with my player's card, because they know and they can change the odds, things like that. It's confirmation bias. You might happen to win right after you do this and assumed it helped. That's the pattern recognition that we were just talking about. So you did something, you got rewarded for it, your brain makes that link and says, I did that because I took my player's card out and put it back in, take my ticket out and put it back in. I have tricked the machine. And I see it all the time on YouTube, because people will do that, and then as soon as they put the ticket back in, they get a win. And what is that doing? That's reinforcing what that confirmation bias is doing to them. And so that's the danger, right? And it's a psychological reset. So taking a break, there's nothing wrong with taking breaks. We talk about this all the time. Cash out, go do something else, come back to that game later, whatever the case is. But that's not changing any of the outcomes or the programming of the machine whatsoever. It doesn't make any difference. It's just slowing you down, which is a good thing. You should do that. And of course, this is slot folklore. Gamblers often pass down unproven tricks that feel like control, but no statistical value. You got to remember that slot machines don't have feelings. They don't care who you are, what you're playing, all that kind of stuff. Nothing's going to change, between you taking your ticket out or, waiting till a time of day or whatever. We're going to get in that in a second. None of that matters with a slot machine. It doesn't care. It is programmed to pay out certain probabilities over time, and it's just randomly being selected every time you push that spin button to commit to the bet. That's it. So try to stop doing all that stuff unless you really think it's slowing you down, and that could be a good tactic, right? Let's move on to the next one. All right, so if you get repeated wins on a slot machine, does that mean the machine is hot and it is set to win? So did the casino decide at that particular time or that particular machine to set it to be a winner? No. Getting repeated wins on a slot machine does not mean the machine is hot or that it's easy to win. This is a common gambling myth rooted in how our brains try to find patterns in random events, right? We just talked about that. Each spin is independent. Modern slot machines use a random number generator. Are you sick of hearing it yet? Every spin is a separate random event, unaffected by past and future spins. A streak of wins or losses is just variance, not an indicator of future outcomes, okay? Variance is just the pattern, not the patterns, I don't want to say that because then you guys latch on to that. Variance is just the ebb and flow of how a slot machine pays and doesn't pay. You're going to get strings sometimes of wins and strings sometimes of losses, okay? And let's talk about that. The hot machine myth explained. So if you hit several wins in a row, it feels like the machine is hot, right? Because you got a bunch of wins. You don't want to get off of a hot machine, right? How many times have you heard that? Or you better get off of a cold machine because it's not hitting anything. But that's usually just short-term luck. Or on the other side, short-term unluck, right? Not a programming mode. There's no program on a slot machine that says it's time to be hot and it's time to be cold. It just happens with randomness. That stuff has to happen. Otherwise, I would really question whether it was random or not if you didn't have those kind of events. The machine isn't aware that it's giving you a win. It's just running through random number combinations and the probabilities that are assigned to that game. That's it. There's no advanced algorithm and AI and stuff being used inside of there. It's just playing a program. That's it. But why does the hot and cold illusion happen? Like, what is that exactly? Because people will never stop saying it, okay? Humans are pattern seeking. We just talked about that. We naturally look for trends, even in data that is supposed to be randomized. We're still trying to focus in on things that we thought we saw, especially when it's something we don't understand. It's just human nature to be like that. So I don't blame anybody for thinking that a machine is hot and cold because we're just designed that way. But it's important that you don't make gambling decisions based off of that because you may be on a hot machine, in quotes, and you refuse to get up because you think it's in a paying mode and you just keep putting money in, and what happens? It stops, you know, or you get unlucky, whatever the case is, and then you start to lose money because you were going off of that notion thinking that it was a hot machine, right? You can see the danger in this stuff. So casinos absolutely know this. They know people talk about hot and cold machines. They know people talk about playing at certain times of day and all this stuff. And they are never going to be the kind of people to tell you otherwise. Because what does it do? It creates more people, more gamblers, more money going in as long as they keep believing in this stuff. And we are trying to prevent that. We are looking at the other side of the coin here, so to speak. We want you to see that none of that stuff matters. And you can start to trick the casinos back saying, listen, you can tell me anything you want to tell me about hot machines or cold machines. I have hosts that used to tell me, man, a lot of money's been put through these machines, so you're in for a great treat this weekend. You came on the right weekend because there's been a lot of money going through it. It's false, right? And I know that, so I was not going to be fooled into thinking, wow, maybe I should have brought a bigger budget. I'm not going to let that happen to me, and you shouldn't either. Let's move on to the next one. Is there a better time of day to play slot machines? So the claim that I've heard is that the best time to play is after a holiday event or any kind of event the following morning between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. because the financial goals need to be reconciled or whatever the reasoning is, okay? No, there's no statistically or mechanically better time of day to play a slot machine because modern slot machines are governed by random number generation that produce completely independent outcomes on every spin, no matter how often the machine is played. All right, so why do people ask this? Everybody's always asking, especially us, like why there has to be a better time of day because I've always won more in the morning, and then we hear people say I always win better on Thursday afternoons around 3. We've heard people say I always win overnight. You know, it's all over the place, right? And that's randomness that's actually going on there. But why do people ask that? So some players just believe that slots are looser during slow hours, like early morning or on weekdays. Casinos may tighten slots during peak hours to make more money. I mean, it makes logical sense, right? So people latch onto that. And they've seen more jackpots at night or during a specific time window. But these beliefs are mostly based on player psychology and misinterpretation of randomness, not fact, okay? Again, brain tricking us. So what's actually true? The myth is casinos change the odds by the time of day or on a schedule. Not legally allowed in regulated jurisdictions without logging and approval. And more people playing equals more jackpots. Well, this is possibly true because of not because of better odds. Like the odds have not changed because it's crowded. Just more spins are being made, so you're more likely to see more jackpots going off. There's more people in there, and it just increases the probability of seeing somebody hit a jackpot. And playing at odd hours gives better odds. People think about that all the time. And slot odds remain constant, 24/7, 7 days a week. Doesn't matter what day, what time of day you're playing anything, after a big event, before a big event, during a big event, none of that stuff makes any difference. The odds are constant, the probabilities are constant, they're not changing. All right guys, to wrap all this up, I want you to think about something real quick. Just because you hear something and somebody says, you should believe me because of X, doesn't mean you should automatically believe them. And that includes us as well, okay? We think we have the credentials that you would trust and understand what we say, but we don't want you to stop there, even with the stuff that we say or you hear from anybody else. I've showed you a tool today, ChatGPT. There's a lot of them out there, like we mentioned. Do your own research. If you think something sounds fishy and it sounds off, we get comments all the time. This person on YouTube is saying the exact opposite of everything you're saying. One of you is lying. How do we know? I can't just say, well, he's lying. I can't just say that, right? Because then it doesn't make me look any better. You got to do your own research to figure out who is lying and who isn't, who is providing the misinformation, or maybe taking a shred of truth and expanding it to make it sound way more grandiose than it actually is, okay? This is important stuff, guys, and normally I wouldn't care about pointing out misinformation. You know, somebody comes up to me and says, hey, they're installing a Starbucks across the street. I'm not going to be physically hurt if they were lying to me or pulling my leg, okay? I'll just go somewhere else to go to a Starbucks. It's not a big deal, but this is a totally different realm here. We're talking about gambling. We're talking about putting your money on the line and playing games. If you base your betting decisions off of misinformation, then that's your fault, right? I hate to say that, but it is your fault because you listened to something and you did not validate it. And we want to protect all of you, but you've got to do a little bit on your own to validate what you've heard, make sure it's legit, and things like that. Do your own research. Do your own research. Do your own research. Incredibly important. All right, guys? Quick note before we end this video. You probably know who I'm talking about. We are not going to mention names. I do not want to see any hateful comments in the comments section below. They will all be deleted if I see it. We're going to be respectful. This message is about learning about misinformation, not by doxing somebody or getting them off the internet, right? That's not what we're about here. That's not what we're trying to do. We are not those types of people. He decides to make a living that way. That's great. I wish him the best of luck, but you gotta fact check, guys. You gotta listen, interpret, use some tools, and then make it come out the other ear well informed. Make sense? All right, gamble smart, gamble safe. I'm Mark. I hope you guys have a wonderful week this coming up, and take care. Bye-bye.